Hello, I'm Roberta Winters, past president of the League of Women Voters of Radnor Township. I now have a new role as president of the Delaware County Interleague Organization, or ILO. It's basically a board that works with the Radnor League and the Central Delaware County League on Delaware County issues. The biggest of these areas is, of course, elections. Why? Under the Pennsylvania Election Code, each county has the responsibility for all aspects of running elections. This means there are 67 different ways of doing things. In recent years, the County League has been involved with the selection of voting machines and the training of poll workers. Many of our members work the polls and have an upfront and personal perspective of each election. As you know, the League is also a trusted, nonpartisan source of election information. Vote 411 is the place to go to find out about voter registration, polling places, what's on the ballot, and even the candidates. Today, I have with me Jim Allen, the Director of Elections for our county. He has the awesome responsibility for keeping our elections fair, safe, and secure. Thank you, Jim, for joining us today.
Thank you, Roberta.
Can you tell our audience a bit about yourself and what attracted you to come to Delaware County?
Well, I'm a former journalist who moved into government service around 1999, and it was originally in a treasury operation, and we were tasked with a new treasurer for the first time in decades, and we were reforming that office, trying to streamline everything from payment processing to refunds to just make the whole process easier. And one of my mentors at the time was with the election board in Chicago, and he was going to retire, and he approached me about taking his job. For me, I'd been a fan of elections all my life. I've been, monitoring elections as a reporter for 15 years, and so it was a fascination. It was a dream job, and I transitioned to that position initially just for public relations, but then it grew to be strategic planning and management of the website and outreach and continuity of operations. So that's basically a fancy term for contingency planning, so that you can make sure that no matter what happened, you remained operational and on track on election day.
Wow. So you came to Delaware County?
Yes.
Did you find it different or the same?
I found it very different because, so I worked at the right hand of the election director for 14 years in my previous role. And so this was after 2020, which was a tumultuous year for election officials everywhere. I began looking around at different opportunities in Virginia, Pennsylvania, California, because the rest of Illinois is largely county clerks. And so there's not a board of elections, and the top management people are whoever ran that county clerk's campaign. Delaware County is very much like the county I grew up in Lake County, Illinois. Very conservative heritage, very open-minded, focused on open space, and having a moderate type of growth. So in a certain way, this is like coming home, just in a whole different arena. What I didn't anticipate was how competitive the state would be, and how that brings to bear various tensions and oversight by the public at large, and it's been a wonderful challenge.
Well, most people know we have 2 elections every year.
Yes.
One in the spring and one in the fall. What have you been doing all summer to prepare for the election in November, Jim?
Oh, well, there's a number of activities, starting with our biggest year-round activity that people tend to think of elections as this pop-up type of industry. And it's a really, really strange business model here and everywhere, in that you have a small group of people who work year-round, basically to plan, execute, and be able to be ready to expand to 2,100 individuals working on election day, including poll workers who we're very fortunate to have, and to expand for one day and make sure that everything in terms of training, in terms of equipment, in terms of deliveries, in terms of systems, operates seamlessly. So we're very reliant on people who only do this 2 days out of the year. And they have to set up that equipment and follow the laws, and we have to instruct them on how to go through the day and make sure that they operate everything smoothly, so that all the way through drop-off on election night, we get our memory devices and we get everything secured and are able to get results to people a lot faster.
Well, I'm sure things get busy right around Election Day. So can you describe what the Bureau is doing just that final week before the polls are open?
Well, to get back to your earlier question, I didn't mean to dodge it. There's voter registration activity all summer long. There's preparation of we're going through recalibrating, making sure that all the voting equipment is ready, making sure that all the signage, all the forms, everything for Election Day is all set to go. So one of the things that we're very proud of, and that the poll workers have loved, and it's made check-in go faster, are the electronic poll books. Those electronic poll books are basically, you used to rely on paper poll books that only had the voters in that precinct. And that's great if you're in the right polling place and your name is easy to look up. It's not so good in terms of you have to print those 2 weeks in advance, 2.5 weeks in advance. So the information is outdated the day after we print them. Wow. And then you have to have a supplemental list. So the poll workers are having to use basically an old phone book to look up voters. I mean, it's 20th century technology and we're in the 21st century. The electronic poll books instead have all the latest data, and you are able to look up any voter from the county. And if they're in the wrong place, it'll print out a ticket telling them that they need to go to the Presbyterian Church, or they need to go to Wayne Elementary, or whatever the case may be. So we're very proud of that development, but that takes a lot of advanced work, making sure that all the voter registration, all the vote-by-mail data, everything is in there, so that it is ready to do its job, which is to provide consistent instructions for our poll workers and our voters in every voter situation. So this reduces the need for our poll workers to try to remember what they heard or remember in a class from 2-3 weeks earlier. So this basically looks up the voter. You type in 3 letters of the last name, 3 letters of the first name, and the options come up, and you're able to check the voter's address or date of birth, whatever. If they don't come up, because let's say they have a name like O'Malley and there's an apostrophe in there, or there might be a space, or they have a maiden name still, or whatever, you can search by date of birth.
Wow.
You can search by address. So it's a wonderful piece of technology that's going to make voter check-in, has already made voter check-in go much more fast, much more quickly.
Wow. So all that's going on all summer long. You're checking the machines, you're updating this electronic poll worker book, you're keeping everything together. And then right before the election, what happens that last few days? Well, besides not getting any sleep.
There's a ton of activity, especially in a presidential year. We have our frequent voters who vote religiously every single election. You don't have to ring the dinner bell. They know it's election day, and they're going to come out to vote, whether it's a municipal primary, a municipal election, a midterm primary, a midterm election, or a presidential primary, presidential election. But then you have a lot of voters who are infrequent voters or only vote in presidential years. And those are the voters who we're tending to see, they're updating their registration now. And especially in the final month before Election Day, They wait until that 15 days before Election Day. So a lot of voter drives are turning in forms. A lot of times people are asked, do you need to register to vote for this election? And they hear that and they think they need to register to vote every single election. They don't. So we have to go through a lot of duplicate forms and make sure that we're not registering someone twice. There's a lot of steps in the process. And we're also doing list maintenance work so that we're removing outdated records for people who've moved or
died or something.
Yeah, exactly. Cleaning up the voter rolls to make sure everything's all tight. And we're also putting the final pieces of the puzzle together for the equipment that the poll workers are going to pick up and then use and drop off. We're also processing the last vote-by-mail applications. People tend to wait until the last minute. And if any of you are waiting to, please go online. Online, you can go to pa.gov and search for elections, and you'll be able to update your registration or just check the status. Make sure that you're still registered where you live now. You can also apply now if you care to vote by mail or vote absentee. You can do that now. That way, whatever the case is, if there's a polling place change in the month before Election Day that's unavoidable on our part, let's say the church realizes that they've got construction work and they can't host a polling place, you'll get a card, you'll get a notice. So please don't wait. If you're taking interest or even just mildly taking interest, you'll take interest after Labor Day, please get those things squared away now. The other thing that we're working on in the final weeks is going through the final applications for mail and absentee ballots and making sure that those get out on a timely basis. We're working with the Postal Service if there are any issues with that. We're working at the warehouse, putting the final touches on doing all the logic and accuracy testing for 428 precincts.
Wow.
So we're testing. We basically take the equipment and we put it through the paces of an election day, kind of in a mock election mode, and then it's in live mode, but it's a test that makes sure that every single selection is going to come out. So if Smith is supposed to get 3 votes, Smith gets 3 votes. If Jones is supposed to get 2 votes, Jones gets 2. So we put all the equipment through the paces to make sure that on Election Day, it's going to function perfectly for the voters.
Well, I can tell you don't have much time to put your feet up. So what do you do when mail-in ballots arrive?
So the first step is making sure we maintain the counts, knowing that we received 450 or 500 that day or 20 or whatever the case may be. The second step is logging all of those returned envelopes into the SURE system. So the SURE system is the statewide uniform registry of electors. And it's the system that every one of the 67 counties has to use to approve any kind of application. It makes sure that there's an ID that's verified, whether it's a Social Security number or a PennDOT driver's license or state ID. We can only process, in our case, voters in Delaware County. And then that also issues a unique correspondence code for each, not just the voter, but that voter's application. Because what happens if a voter doesn't receive their first ballot in the mail, their only ballot that they should receive in the mail, and calls us and says, it's been 2 weeks, I didn't get my ballot, send out another one. So we send out another one. Well, we immediately cancel that first one so that even if it comes back, that correspondence code that corresponds to that first application cannot be processed. Only the second one can be. So there are all kinds of different safeguards built into the system. So we scan all those envelopes into the SURE system and make sure that the records are updated so that if Josephine Williams wants to see whether her ballot's been received, she can see that immediately. That also builds into our poll book system, our electronic poll book system, so that once a voter has returned a ballot, it's going to show up on Election Day. You cannot vote in person. Now, if they say, no, I didn't return it, or I returned it, but I failed to sign the envelope and I received notice from the county, so then we'll give them a provisional ballot. And a provisional ballot can't go into the ballot box. It's got to be analyzed later in the week after to make sure that that person didn't vote by mail. So there are safeguards built in for in-person voting and absentee and mail voting.
Well, it sounds like it's virtually impossible for people to try to fool the system, we hope. It seems that way because you've got safeguards all along the way, and that's what keeps our elections safe and secure. Now, August 1st is actually a civic holiday. It's called Poll Worker Day. Can you tell the audience members about how they might become a poll worker and why that job's just so important in Delaware County?
Poll workers are the backbone of the entire system, here and everywhere across the United States. Poll workers have an immensely rewarding and tough job. You're going to take training, learn how to set up the equipment, keep it secure all election day, process voters, check them in, issue a ballot, deal with any kind of headache that comes up where, I shouldn't say headache, but let's say a voter simply makes a mistake on the ballot and comes back and wants to spoil the ballot. There's a process for that. There's paperwork that's involved. And these individuals typically work in their neighborhood or at least their community, but they can also work in another community. So if someone in Springfield wants to work as a poll worker, but we don't have any slots in their precinct, we can put them in somewhere else in Springfield. We can put them perhaps in Media or Radnor or wherever, so that we have staffing in all of our polling places. And those individuals work a long day, but it's a very rewarding job. It's a tough job. They start in the morning, setting up at 6 in the morning so that they can open at 7 a.m. And then they work all the way through, close the polls at 8 p.m., probably finish getting their paperwork done at 9 p.m. They can deal with every situation under the sun. We try to train them what the roles of the poll watchers are to maintain transparency, what the rules are, how to help the voters if they arrive in the wrong polling place, how to help the voters in any situation, when to issue provisional ballots, when to not issue provisional ballots, when to ask for ID, because there are situations where ID is required. In fact, one of the items that we like about the poll books is that if ID is ever required in the polling place again, these are enabled to scan that ID and check that voter in very accurately. So it's not a feature that we can activate right now under state rules, but it is there, and it can zip the voters through and avoid any kind of lines at the polling place. But there's a lot to do for the poll workers. They take a good 3-hour training, and if you're a voter, please tell the poll workers thank you for their support. They can contact us at the poll worker hotline. You can find that at delcopa.gov/elections, and you can call us. You can sign up online. We'll check to see that you're a registered voter in Delaware County, and we'll try to find a slot for you. We have, fortunately, a good community of citizens who enjoy working in their polls and who have done it for a number of years and who are committed to coming back this fall. So we're in a lot better shape than many other counties in Pennsylvania and elsewhere.
Well, I know I do a lot of student voter registration, and I always remind them about they need a voter ID if it's their first time at a polling place.
Absolutely.
And also for the other students that even if they can't vote, they could be poll workers. I think they're 17 years old, they could be a poll worker, and that's an opportunity to earn some money and get involved at a younger age in the importance of elections and civic responsibility. So I'm glad we have those opportunities.
We're thrilled when we have 17, 18-year-old students who, they're juniors and seniors in high school. When they participate, they have an even higher comfort level than our longstanding poll workers with the technology. So they're definitely an asset when they contribute. They get paid the same as their counterparts, and we train them to make sure that they understand that they're supposed to be treated as an equal in that role.
Well, thank you. What happens when the polls close?
When the polls close, there's a flurry of activity that the poll workers need to complete. So they have to close the polls on the equipment, which basically shuts down all the voting and make sure that no one can crank it up and begin the process after the polls close. So if someone were to break into the equipment later or something like that, no, once it's closed, it's closed. So they have to secure the ballot box with all the paper ballots. They have to complete all the paperwork. They have to print out the results and post one set of results in the precinct on election night. One set goes to the Bureau of Elections, and then the third set is kept by the minority inspector. So it's a unique feature in state law here in PA that I love, in that there's an independent keeper of the records in every single precinct. And you look back to past elections where people have had questions, and between posting the results on the wall, on the door, the window of the polling place, as well as the minority inspector having a set of the results from that precinct, it helps remove the whole mystique about what happened between election, the polling place and when the results were returned. There's proof positive that even before that V drive leaves the polling place, what the results were on election night before anything was shut down. So they complete all their paperwork, and then one of them is assigned to deliver the paperwork, the secured ballot box, the V drive that's secured in an envelope that is signed by across the flap by all of the different poll workers. It's a tamper-evident envelope. We've added that since 2021 to try to address additional concerns. And then they return that. Then they go through a process at where we return the materials. We check in all the materials, transfer the memory devices down to the central count operation, load those V drives in, and you see them on the internet. We've worked to make that a lot faster, so that drop-off, as soon as they get to the drop-off site, they're able to
unload, basically.
We're able to get those results a lot faster. So our goal is to have all the precincts reported by 11:30 at night, as opposed to what happened before we got here. So,
well, it sounds like it's pretty difficult for a ballot to be lost or not counted, the way you're operating.
It is. We're fortunate also to have had a number of recounts that really test the system. And we've had statewide recounts, which means we've recounted every single ballot in the county. We've had recounts that focus on one community, such as Bethel or Edgemont or Eddystone. We've had contests as close as 3 votes apart between the winner and the loser. And each time, I'm gratified to say, the poll workers did their job. We rescanned and hand counted the ballots, and all the results that were reported initially were verified. So it's gratifying to know. We have at the return board after Election Day, we randomly select with 10-sided dice precincts that'll represent at least 2,000 ballots. We go through those precincts with an independent crew appointed by the Republican and Democratic parties, or Republican and Democratic poll workers, who work side by side at each table. And they go through and verify how many ballots were used, how many ballots were cast, how many ballots were returned unused, and verify every little schematic to make sure that there is no sign of fraud, or if there is a sign of fraud, then we would need to investigate. We've had a couple of poll workers at this most recent primary who joined that team, and both of them came away, one R and one D, and said, I thought the system was good in my precinct, and now I feel a whole lot more confident about the system in the entire county. So that kind of feedback is very, very, warmly received by our staff.
Now, why is there always a delay between the poll closing and getting the official results?
Driving,
no, I'm just saying. But there are also, there are other ballots that we don't know about that come in for the final election results before the election's certified. So you've done your bit, you've got your ballots, and then there's also a pause between you can actually certify the election. Because there's some more ballots and stuff that come in, I believe.
Well, there are additional processes. So they're not really ballots coming in other than the handful of military overseas voters. Military overseas, if they're mailed on time by Election Day, they can arrive up until the Monday after Election Day, Tuesday after Election Day, and still be counted. So that's a very small number. Then there's a small group of mail and absentee ballots where the ID was not verified. Now, we have to receive that ballot envelope by Election Day, but if the ID was not verified, that envelope is still sealed and set aside. Then that voter has until Monday at close of business after Election Day to provide the ID. In those instances, then later we have to process those envelopes. But again, only if they arrive on time by 8 p.m. on Election Day. Lastly, there are provisional ballots. So provisional ballots are where there was a question whether or not that voter was eligible to cast their ballot. And those we have to go through our records and make sure that the voter didn't attempt to vote twice. The voter was a registered voter in Delaware County. And if they were registered but they voted at the wrong place, they only get to vote on the offices from their home district. So there are a couple of processes, but those don't add a whole lot of votes to the tally. We've tightened everything up with a little bit more equipment and staffing so that in more recent elections since 2023, we've had 95% of the election results reported by or shortly after midnight on Election Day.
Wow.
So we don't anticipate that there's going to be a big 3-day, 4-day wait.
That's good. Now, sometimes citizens ask if they can be poll watchers or poll observers for the actual things that are happening at the Bureau of Elections. How does one do that?
So to be a poll watcher, there's two different kinds of individuals who can monitor elections. Poll watchers are, and both are requested by the campaigns. Okay. So a candidate who is on the ballot for that election can get poll watchers, one in every one of the precincts where their name appears on the ballot. And they're in the precinct on Election Day. There's another set under the law of authorized representatives. And those individuals can monitor only what is going on at our central count operation in Chester. So those also, you get one per campaign, so that the office isn't inundated with individuals or overwhelmed, and everybody has space to monitor. So authorized representative, again, is selected by the campaign. So if anybody is interested in being a watcher or an authorized representative, they should contact one of the campaigns, who then will file a request with our office to have that person. They also have to be a registered voter in Delaware County.
Okay, well, that's good to know, because sometimes people ask league members, just how do I get in there and see what's going on? So now, sometimes people vote and they think, well, maybe there's something wrong here. If they believe there's something wrong happening at the polling place, what do they do?
Well, first they should bring it up with their judge of election, right there on the spot.
Right.
And see if there's an explanation that, well, no, it appears this way, but no. If they're not satisfied with that answer, you should call our election hotline at 610-891-VOTE. Again, 610-891-VOTE. And that way we can learn about it. We can assign, if necessary, someone to go out and investigate if there's an issue. And lastly, there's a form that can request in the polling place. And you can fill out that form that goes to both the Department of State and our office so that we can investigate any kind of complaint.
That's great. Now, before I officially thank you, Jim, I'd like to share some important dates on the election calendar for November, because we don't want anyone to miss those deadlines. And on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Delaware County, I want to express our appreciation for you joining us today. I want you to know that we have a stake just like you in keeping our elections fair, safe, and secure. For more information on elections, you can check out the website, Delco Votes. Of course, no program would be possible without the help of Mainline Television 21. Their support in helping us to educate the public in matters of civic importance is essential to our community. To you, our audience, I trust you'll rest easier knowing that your vote will be secure and counted, thanks to the Delaware County Elections Bureau. You can also become a part of becoming a poll worker by joining the League of Women Voters and helping to make our grassroots effort work and expand the voting rights and ensure everyone is fairly representative. Thank you again.